How far would you go to completely transform your life? Would you lose 106 pounds in 3 months? Would you run 135 miles through Death Valley? Would you do 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours to break a world record? For David Goggins, these weren't just challenges, they were necessities. Because when you've hit rock bottom like he did, the only way out is through hell itself. David Goggins' story begins in 1975 in Buffalo, New York. But this wasn't your typical American childhood story. David grew up at a roller skating rink owned by his father. Trent Goggins was a ruthless, abusive man who turned David and his brother Trunis Jr.'s childhood into a living nightmare. Every morning, David had to wake up at 4:30 a.m. Before going to school, he would clean the skating rink floors, wash dishes, and follow his father's brutal orders. If anything went wrong, he couldn't escape a beating. This wasn't just physical torture, it was psychological warfare. By age 6, David had already learned how cruel life could be. My father was trying to break me, David says years later. But what he didn't realize was that while he was breaking me, he was actually making me. In 1981, David's mother, Jackie, finally found the courage to leave Trent. They escaped in the middle of the night, taking David and his brother with her. They moved to Indiana. David was only 6 years old, but the trauma had already left deep scars on his soul. Their new life wasn't easy. His mother, Jackie, worked 3 jobs just to make ends meet. David tried to focus on school, but he had attention deficit disorder and learning disabilities. He was diagnosed with dyslexia. He was always falling behind in class. But the real problem wasn't school. The real problem was David's self-belief. His father had broken him down so much that David felt completely worthless. He was bad at sports, bad at school, and socially awkward. When he reached high school, David was an average student. He had no special talents, no big dreams. He was just focused on surviving. But somewhere deep inside, he knew he wanted to change. He barely graduated high school. His grades were so poor he couldn't get into college. At this point, most people would give up. David did too for a while. After graduating high school, David drifted aimlessly for a while. He worked various jobs: fast food restaurants, construction sites, cleaning companies. He couldn't stick with any of them for long. He had no motivation, no goals, no self-respect. Eventually, he found work at a pest control company, Edsol's Pest Control. Every day he would go to houses and spray for cockroaches and rats. The job was terrible, the pay was terrible, but at least he had some income. During this period, David started eating, not just eating, binge eating. Under the stress and misery, he was consuming 7,000 to 8,000 calories per day. Burgers, pizza, ice cream, he ate whatever he could find. By 2005, David Goggins weighed 300 pounds. For a man who was 6'1", this was morbidly obese. During a doctor's visit, he learned that his resting heart rate was 120 beats per minute. For a normal person, it should be 60 to 80. The doctor told him, "David, you're 24 years old, but you have the heart of a 50-year-old man. If this continues, you won't see 30. That night, David went home and looked in the mirror. What he saw shocked him. There was a stranger staring back, a fat, miserable man with no dreams. That's when David Goggins decided to kill the old David. By chance that night, he was watching a documentary on the Discovery Channel about Navy SEAL training camp. The program showed Hell Week, 5 days with only 4 hours of total sleep, constant cold water, intense physical activities, mental pressure. David couldn't believe what he was seeing on screen. These men were transcending human limitations. They were doing things that seemed impossible, and that's when something clicked in David's mind. If they can do this, I can do it too, he thought. But there was a problem. To become a Navy SEAL, he first needed to enlist in the military. And to enlist, he needed to pass the physical fitness test. In his current condition, David couldn't even climb a flight of stairs without gasping for air. Passing the Navy SEAL test seemed like a fantasy. But David made a decision, an impossible decision. David did the math. The deadline for Navy SEAL applications was 3 months away. In that time, he needed to go from 300 pounds to 194 pounds, 106 pounds. In 90 days, doctors said it was impossible. Nutritionists said it was dangerous, but David didn't listen, because for him, there was no choice. Either he would change or he would die, slowly, as an obese man. On the first day, David tried to run. He couldn't even run a quarter mile. He was out of breath, his knees hurt, he felt like throwing up. But did he stop? No. He went out again the next day, and the next day, and the next. The first week, he could only run half a mile. The second week, 1 mile. The third week, 2 miles. His body was starting to adapt, but his mind was still resisting. David also radically changed his diet. He dropped his daily calorie intake from 8,000 to 1,000. Breakfast, protein shake. Lunch, salad. Dinner, fish and vegetables. That's it. No junk food, no sugar, no processed foods. But the real battle was happening inside David's head. Every morning when his alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., his mind would lie to him. You're tired today, start tomorrow. This pace is too fast, slow down. You can't do this, give up. David learned to silence this inner voice with what he calls the 40% rule. When people feel tired, they've actually only used 40% of their capacity. The remaining 60% is hidden in the mind, locked away by fear and comfort zones. David told himself, when I feel tired, I'm just getting started. By day 30, David had lost 33 pounds. The pace was good but not enough. He decided to get more aggressive. He changed his daily routine to this: 4:30 a.m., 6-mile run. 6 a.m., 2 hours of cycling. 8 a.m., go to work, pest control. 12 p.m., 3-mile run. 6 p.m., gym, 2 hours of weights. 8 p.m., 3-mile walk. 6 to 7 hours of exercise per day. Was it crazy? Absolutely. But David had decided to be crazy. By day 60, David had lost 66 pounds, but the cost was heavy. Every part of his body ached. His knees were swollen, his feet were covered in blisters, his hands were covered in calluses. But something strange was happening. The pain was making David stronger. Physical pain was more bearable than mental pain. For years he had endured mental pain, abuse from his father, failures at school, unemployment. These were mental pains and they were unbearable. Physical pain was different. Physical pain was under David's control. He chose it. He managed it. And as he learned to cope with physical pain, he also learned to cope with mental pain. There's a saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. David learned this through experience. On day 90, David stepped on the scale. 194 pounds. He had hit his target. In 90 days, he had lost exactly 106 pounds. But more importantly, David was now a different person, not just physically, but mentally. When he looked in the mirror, the person he saw was no longer the David from 90 days ago. He took the Navy SEAL physical fitness test. 500-meter swim, passed. Push-ups, 2 minutes, 87 reps passed. Sit-ups, 2 minutes, 95 reps passed. Pull-ups, 20 reps passed. 1.5-mile run, 9:30 passed. David Goggins had become a Navy SEAL candidate. But this was just the beginning. Navy SEAL training is known as the toughest in the world. 80% of candidates can't complete the program. During Hell Week, you get only 4 hours of total sleep over 5 days. Constant cold water, heavy load carrying, mental pressure. David's class started with 180 candidates. By Hell Week, 80 remained. Only 23 finished Hell Week. David was one of them. But David's journey wasn't easy. During training, he was injured 3 times and had to restart the program. Normal people quit after 1 failure. David failed 3 times and came back 3 times. In 2004, he finally earned his Navy SEAL Trident. But for David, this wasn't enough. He wanted more. In 2005, David heard about ultra-marathons from his friend Dean Karnassus. 50-mile, 100-mile, 135-mile races. To normal people, this seems like insanity. To David, it was a new challenge. His first ultramarathon was the San Diego One Day, a race to see how far you can run in 24 hours. David had never run an ultramarathon. The longest distance he'd ever run was 26.2 miles. On race day, David started peeing blood after 30 miles. After 50 miles, his kidneys started hurting. After 70 miles, his vision became blurry. A normal person would stop. David continued. After 24 hours, David had run 100.2 miles. He came in 3rd place. A man with no ultramarathon experience had run 100 miles in his first race and finished 3rd. David's next goal was Badwater 135. Known as the world's toughest race, this event takes place in California's Death Valley. 135 miles, 8,360 feet of elevation gain, 120-degree temperatures. Just participating in this race is a privilege. Only invited runners can compete. David applied but was rejected. He didn't have enough ultramarathon experience. David didn't give up. In 1 year, he ran 9 ultramarathons. He applied to Badwater again. This time he was accepted. In the 2006 Badwater race, David finished 5th. 135 miles of desert running, climbs, 120-degree heat, and David had finished 5th. But David wasn't satisfied. In 2007, he came back and finished 3rd. In 2008, he finished 2nd. David's performances weren't limited to running. In 2013, he decided to break the world record for most pull-ups in 24 hours. The current record was 4,021 pull-ups. David set his target at 4,030. His first attempt failed. After 8 hours, his hands were so damaged he couldn't continue. His second attempt also failed. After 12 hours, muscle cramps began. Third attempt. David completed 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours and 45 minutes. New world record. His hands were bloody, his body was destroyed, but he had achieved his goal. David's success wasn't just about physical endurance. The real secret was mental transformation. David had developed his own philosophy. 1. Callous your mind. Physical work creates calluses on your hands and makes them stronger. Mental challenges strengthen the mind in the same way. Instead of avoiding pain, embrace it. 2. The 40% rule. When people feel tired, they've only used 40% of their capacity. Real potential starts after that point. 3. The cookie jar. Remember past successes during tough moments. Each success adds a cookie to the jar. During difficult times, feed off those cookies. 4. Embrace the suck. Discomfort and pain are inevitable. Instead of fighting them, make them your friends. In 2018, David wrote, "Can't Hurt Me." The book reached #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Millions of people found inspiration in David's story. In the book, David doesn't just tell his story, he also challenges readers. At the end of each chapter are challenge sections. David wants readers to try his methods in their own lives. David began speaking worldwide. Universities, corporations, sports teams, everyone wanted to learn David's mental toughness methods. Today, David Goggins is 49 years old. He still runs 12 to 15 miles every day. He still competes in ultramarathons. He still pushes himself. David's daily routine. 4 a.m., wake up. 4:30 a.m., 9 to 12 mile run. 7 a.m., breakfast. 8 a.m., work, motivational speaking, book writing. 12 p.m., 2 hours gym. 6 p.m., 3 to 6 mile bike ride. 8 p.m., dinner. 9 p.m., reading, writing. 10 p.m., sleep. At 49, his body is fitter than many 25-year-old athletes. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline is forever. Your comfort zone is the most dangerous place in your mind. There's no such thing as impossible. It just requires more work. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. When your body wants to quit, your mind is just getting started. David Goggins' story isn't just about one person's transformation. He showed millions of people that their limits are much wider than they think. Every day, thousands of people are inspired by David to push their own limits. On social media, under the hashtag Goggins Challenge, people share their own challenges. David transformed from an obese pest control worker to one of the world's toughest athletes. But more importantly, he learned to master his own mind, both for himself and for millions of others. David Goggins' story proves this. Human willpower is above everything else. Physical limits, mental limits, environmental conditions. All of these can be overcome if a 300-pound, depressed, aimless man can transform himself into a Navy SEAL and ultramarathon champion. You can achieve your dreams too. But remember, David's success didn't come overnight. 3 months, 90 days of constant discipline, then years of training, then dozens of races, then world records. Success isn't an event, it's a process, and in that process, your biggest enemy will be yourself. Your own mind will tell you, this is too hard, give up. That's when you remember David Goggins. When he got up at 4:30 a.m., he felt tired. When he lost 106 pounds, he was in pain. When he ran 135 miles, his body was destroyed. But he continued, because David knew that can't hurt me. So what will your story be? Remember, the only thing that can truly stop you in life is yourself. David Goggins traveled the road from 300 pounds to ultra marathon championship. You can travel your own road too. Take action, set your goals, and like David did, take one more step every day. Because there's no such thing as impossible. There are just things you haven't worked hard enough on yet. So, what's your story?